working on some heels out patterning and also trying to keep my knees going forward. So, see a lot of people walking, they'll kind of man spread it, they'll kind of be here. This can cause, not for everybody. Some people it might be okay, because everyone's mechanics are going to be a little different. Don't want to force everyone into the exact same position, I don't think is great. But if you're somebody that has knee pain, ankle pain, back pain, hip pain, this could be something that you could explore. Just to simply work on having straighter feet. The pictures you take at Christmas, the pictures you take with people, and you're like this all the time, or like this, or you're like your hips are like tucked underneath you, and you're like this, and you're like, these are all things you can kind of work on over time. And you can work on starting to go, I like to think of this as heels out more so than just like your toes in. But either way you slice it, toes in is going to force the heel out, right? When I was boxing, I was learning how to box and learning how to throw some bombs. When you go to throw a punch, you go to throw a straight right, you're going to flick this back heel out. People say like you're putting out a cigarette. Boom, right? And your force and your strength gets spun up and comes from being able to turn those feet over to basically get your hips through. We see the same thing with, swinging a baseball bat. You're driving those hips through, but a lot of that comes from hip, knee, foot, throwing a baseball, football, like, all those things. It kind of spun up in a very similar way. So in studying some of this and going over some of these things over the years, walk backwards, drive the heels out. Not just the heels back, but the heels out. Not just the heels out, but the heels back as well. And not just the heels back, but the heels out, right? So it's like this. Might look a little weird, might feel a little silly, might feel a little crazy, but this is a drill, okay? Does not mean you have to walk around like this all the time. But for me, sometimes on this left side, it's harder for me to heel out because that hip's a little tight. You can slow it down. Why not slow it down? Get a feel for it. As they say with the Goda practice, you want to bow and corner. Corner is knee in, heel out. Bow is right here. That's a bow. When you're walking, you want to land on the outside chub of your foot. So it's not necessarily toe. You're not necessarily walking around like this. Okay? You are landing on your fat pads of your foot. The fat pads of your foot. Believe it or not, this style of walking can help you decompress your whole body if you can figure out a way to walk better. Some people are so stiff and compressed, they might not be able just to practice this randomly and be able to do it. They might have to do a lot of other stuff. But in my opinion, a lot of this action, so much of this action comes from like the hip. But it's not necessarily just the hip. It's not enough to say the hip. Because your foot is controlled by your hip. And your foot is also controlled by your foot. So it makes it a little complicated sometimes. But as I'm doing some of these things, I like to think about, driving the knees forward, driving the knees in. A lot of times sprinters, to get maximum force, when they're at acceleration, their knees are in and their heels are out. Not all the time, not everybody all the time, but this was, Randy Moss. He played for the Vikings, Patriots, one of the most dominant football players ever. His knees were in a lot. I know it's easy just to look at, a couple examples, but you got like Ed Reed and a bunch of other guys who had this Goda positioning, greatest of all time actions, right, where the knees are coming inward into the crotch, and that's important for force production. that heel out thing is a real thing. Again, with throwing a football, throwing a baseball, throwing a punch, you can throw a punch like this. You can just throw a punch, but you're going to have a lot more power, a lot more snap behind it. Your arm should be able to be thrown basically with your hip. But again, what I'm saying is it's not just your hip, it's your whole body. So we need your spine to be involved too. So when you go to walk, you got to have almost like a little bit of extra movement. Just exaggerate it for a little while. You know, if you just need to do it in the privacy of your own home, or filming yourself the way I'm filming myself now. I film myself a lot, doing a lot of different things I don't necessarily always want to show to you guys because they're experimental. There's experimental things. But you want to walk kind of like you just dunked on somebody. If you just dunked on somebody, you're going to be like brash. You're going to feel accomplished, right? So you can still see I still got some work to do with my walk and my gait. I have a short gait. One of the reasons I have a short gait is just because my body is tight. But what I've learned is that when I start to keep my feet straighter, my body doesn't feel as tight. I feel like I could take longer steps. I feel like I can afford to get my feet away from my body. Whereas normally I don't want to get my feet away from my body because it feels uncomfortable with me. But right now, I'm drilling right now, right through the, looking right at the mirror. I have a mirror behind me too. I got mirrors everywhere. And so with the mirror behind me, I could see my foot. See if I can position this way. And I can work on turning it out. The left foot where I struggle, I can work on turning that guy. It's really hard for me to get a view of here. Here we go. I can work on spinning that guy outward and driving that toe inward as I'm going to walk. These are things I get to work on as I look in the mirror. The mirror is not going to lie to me. The camera's not going to lie to me. It's going to tell me what's going on. So this is some of the way I've been working on my gait, been working on my movement. And if you're walking around, you know, with your toes out and your feet out, and you have knee and hip pain and back pain and so forth, and you want to start to get rid of some of those pains, try some of the suggestions I just had right there. Thank you guys so much for following along. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.